Have you ever noticed that people often describe empaths as having a gift? They can walk into a room and instantly feel the tension. They can tell when someone is hurting before a word is spoken. They absorb emotions deeply, care intensely, and seem to understand people in ways others don't. And because of that, empathy is usually treated as something purely positive, a strength, a superpower. But what if some of the things people call empathy aren't actually empathy at all? What if constantly carrying other people's emotions isn't a sign of emotional strength, but a sign that something else is happening beneath the surface? Because here's what most conversations about empaths never mention. The people who feel the deepest pain are often the same people who struggle with boundaries. The people who understand everyone else often struggle to understand themselves. And the people who spend their lives rescuing others sometimes don't realize they're slowly abandoning themselves in the process. In fact, some of the most exhausting behaviors associated with empaths aren't gifts at all. They're survival strategies. And once you see the difference, you start looking at empathy in a completely different way. So if you've ever felt emotionally drained after being around people, if you've ever carried problems that weren't yours to solve, or if you've ever wondered why being the caring one feels so exhausting, this video might explain more than you expect. A woman sits across from a friend in a coffee shop. Within minutes, her friend is talking about problems at work, relationship stress, family drama, and everything else that's weighing on her mind. The woman listens. She always listens. By the time they leave, her friend feels lighter, calmer, relieved. But on the drive home, something strange happens. The woman feels exhausted, not physically, emotionally. She keeps replaying the conversation in her head. She worries about problems that aren't hers. She feels responsible for fixing things she can't control. And by the end of the day, she's carrying a weight that didn't belong to her when she woke up that morning. For years, she told herself it was because she was an empath. But eventually, she started asking a different question. Was she feeling other people's emotions? Or had she simply never learned where their emotions ended and hers began? And that question changes everything. Before we talk about the dark side of empathy, we need to clear up one important misunderstanding. Most people use the words empathetic and sensitive as if they mean the same thing. They don't. Empathy is the ability to understand what another person is feeling. Sensitivity is how strongly you react to what another person is feeling. And those are very different things. Imagine two people sitting across from someone who is upset. The first person notices the pain, understands it, offers support, and remains emotionally grounded. The second person notices the pain, absorbs it, carries it home, thinks about it all night, and feels responsible for fixing it. Both people care, but only one of them is carrying an emotional burden that was never theirs to begin with. This distinction matters because many people who identify as empaths aren't just understanding emotions, they're absorbing them. And that absorption often comes at a cost. The hidden psychology nobody talks about. Here's where things get interesting. Many highly sensitive people believe they can feel what everyone else is feeling because they're naturally gifted at reading emotions. Sometimes that's true. But psychology suggests there may be another explanation. Many people who describe themselves as empaths grew up in environments where paying close attention to emotions was necessary. Maybe a parent had unpredictable moods. Maybe there was conflict at home. Maybe they learned early that noticing emotional shifts helped them avoid criticism, rejection, or tension. Over time, their brain became extremely skilled at scanning people, reading faces, monitoring tone of voice, detecting tiny changes in mood. Eventually, this became automatic. What feels like a gift today may have started as a survival skill years ago. And that's why some highly sensitive people can walk into a room and instantly feel something is off. Their brain has spent years becoming an expert observer. But here's the problem. When your nervous system is always scanning, it never fully relaxes. And that's where the hidden costs begin. Dark pattern number one, you absorb emotions that were never yours. Have you ever spoken to someone who was anxious, angry, frustrated, or overwhelmed, and then found yourself feeling exactly the same way afterward? This is something psychologists call emotional contagion. Emotions spread between people more easily than most realize. Spend enough time around a stressed person and your body can begin responding as if the stress belongs to you. The challenge for many empaths is that they don't simply notice emotions, they internalize them. Someone else is worried. Now you're worried. Someone else is angry. Now you're tense. Someone else is overwhelmed. Now your day feels heavier. The dangerous part is that after a while, you stop knowing which emotions belong to you and which emotions belong to everyone else. Your emotional world becomes crowded with feelings you never created. And carrying that weight day after day is exhausting. But that's only the first pattern. The second one is even harder to recognize because society often rewards it. Dark pattern number 2, you become addicted to rescuing people. People often assume empaths help others because they're kind, and many are. But sometimes something deeper is happening. Some people become so attached to being needed that helping others becomes part of their identity. They feel valuable when they're solving problems, important when they're rescuing someone, useful when someone depends on them. Without realizing it, they begin building relationships around emotional caretaking. They're always available, always listening, always fixing, always sacrificing. But here's the uncomfortable question. If helping people constantly leaves you exhausted, why do you keep doing it? For some people, the answer is difficult to hear. Because being needed can feel safer than setting boundaries. Being needed can feel safer than disappointing someone. Being needed can feel safer than asking for your own needs to be met. What starts as compassion slowly becomes self-neglect, and eventually the rescuer becomes the person who needs rescuing. Dark pattern number 3, you abandon yourself to keep others comfortable. This may be the darkest pattern of all. Many highly sensitive people become experts at understanding everyone else's emotions, but they struggle to honor their own. They know when someone else is upset, but ignore their own exhaustion. They know when someone else needs space, but never take space themselves. They know when someone else feels hurt, but rarely acknowledge their own pain. Over time, they develop a habit psychologists often associate with the fawn response. Instead of fighting conflict, instead of leaving conflict, they manage conflict by keeping everyone else comfortable. They say yes when they want to say no. They tolerate behavior they shouldn't tolerate. They suppress their own feelings to maintain peace. From the outside, this can look like kindness. Inside, it often feels like emotional burnout. Because every time you abandon yourself to protect someone else's comfort, you teach your mind that your needs matter less. And eventually, that belief becomes part of your identity. The truth about protecting your energy. This is where many empath discussions go wrong. People talk about protecting your energy as if it's something mystical, but most of the time it's surprisingly practical. Protecting your energy means understanding one simple truth. Not everything you feel belongs to you. Someone else's sadness can belong to them. Someone else's anxiety can belong to them. Someone else's anger can belong to them. You can care without caring. You can support without rescuing. You can listen without absorbing. The healthiest empaths aren't the ones who feel the most. They're the ones who know where to draw the line. Because empathy without boundaries becomes exhaustion. Empathy with boundaries becomes wisdom. And that distinction changes everything. If you've ever called yourself an empath, I hope this video gave you something more valuable than validation. I hope it gave you clarity. Because sensitivity isn't a weakness, and empathy isn't the problem. The real challenge is learning how to care for others without losing yourself in the process. And if this video helped you understand something about your own mind, subscribe to The Wired Mind. Every week, we explore the hidden psychology behind human behavior, emotions, relationships, and the patterns most people never notice. And if you've ever struggled with absorbing other people's emotions, let me know in the comments. What's one boundary you're learning to set that has changed your life? Before you go, there's one more thing worth thinking about. A lot of people who identify as empaths have another trait in common. They notice everything: the mood shifts, the awkward pauses, the tiny changes in someone's tone, expression, or behavior. And while that can make you incredibly perceptive, it can also become exhausting. Because sometimes the people who absorb everyone else's emotions are the same people whose minds never fully switch off. If that sounds familiar, the next video will connect a lot of dots. Watch The Psychology of People Who Are Too Aware. It explains why some people constantly scan their environment, overanalyze social situations, and pick up details that everyone else misses. And you may discover that what you've always called empathy is only one piece of a much bigger psychological pattern. I'll see you there.